Hey guys, welcome to Thinking Theology. I'm Don. I'm more of a philosopher looking at theological arguments. I don't care if somebody's an atheist. I don't care if they're a hardcore Christian. I can handle my own beliefs, but I assess arguments, whether or not they make sense. And Christopher Hitchens, I don't know much of his work. I just know that he was a hardcore atheist. He passed away in 2011. So this isn't going to be a slamming of anybody. That's not my style. If somebody's kind or thoughtful, or maybe even stand in a way where they acknowledge they might be wrong about something, I'm cool with that. Because when you study logic and philosophy, people can be wrong. I understand that about myself. So anyway, I'm just going to look at this. This is a reaction. The title of it caught my attention. Christopher Hitchens' Sharpest Arguments Against Religion. So let's see what he's got to say.
I submit that if we knew half of what we know now about physics, about biology and astronomy, the Abrahamic religions couldn't be founded in this day. None of them could be founded and believed in by people who knew what we now know. The human species is, let's say, at least 100,000 years old. It's probably much older, maybe 250,000 years. You have to believe this to believe in Abrahamic religion. You have to believe the following: that for, let's call it 100,000 years, humanity is born, doesn't live long, mostly dies in childbirth, dies of its teeth, dies in terrible wars, famines, plagues, dies in fear because it doesn't know why there are volcanoes, doesn't know why there are plagues, doesn't know why there are earthquakes or tsunamis. Fear, misery, shame, terror, cruelty of all kinds. And for the first 97,000 of those years, heaven watches like this. But then after 97,000 years of it decides, we can't let this go on. We'll have to intervene. But only in the most barbaric and backward parts of the Middle East will we show our face to people who can't read, who are terrified, who are ignorant, who live basically with and like animals. Now, I submit that whatever may be the case, whatever is true, whatever may remain to us to find out, and as Socrates says, the great definition of wisdom is having some idea of how ignorant you are, whatever the outcome is, morally, scientifically, or logically, that cannot have been the case. Religion is false. I take my stand. Some people I know.
Okay, to that, I would say that also applies to him. And I mean, he made good points. One point, though, that I would insert here is that he is assuming that, say, 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, really, when the Abrahamic religions started in the Middle East, that they were barbaric, as he said, but he's assuming that the level of awareness that we have today won't be considered barbaric in another 3,000 years. So whatever he's saying might be subverted by the same line of reasoning. Might be. So let's see what comes next.
Who are atheists will say they wish they could believe it. Some people I know who are former believers say they wish they could have their old faith back. They miss it. I don't understand this at all. I think it's an excellent thing that there's no reason to believe in the absurd propositions I just admittedly rather briefly rehearsed to you. The main reason for this, I think, is that it is a totalitarian belief. It is the wish to be a slave. It is the desire that there be an unalterable, unchallengeable, tyrannical authority who can convict you of thought crime while you are asleep, who can subject you, who must indeed subject you, to a total surveillance around the clock, every waking and sleeping minute of your life, I say of your life, before you're born, and even worse, and where the real fun begins, after you're dead.
Yeah, well, the notion that God can read everything that's going on and then will hold you accountable is sort of like the unhappy high school principal rifling through your files, as Anne Lamott would say. I mean, there may be different ways of looking at it. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with what he's saying. I say it seems to be singularly coming from one direction, that whatever those thoughts may be in your head, that this judge, who he's saying is God, as a totalitarian, and you're a slave to this eventual judgment and constant judgment and inspection, that there would be no means of showing mercy or understanding in that. That's just one other way of thinking about it. The name of the channel is Thinking Theology. It's not indicting a particular doctrine. It's about saying whether or not it makes sense, or whether or not there are nuances or other larger ways, or just different ways of looking at a given idea.
A celestial North Korea. Who wants this to be true? Who but a slave desires such a ghastly fate? I've been to North Korea. It has a dead man as its president. Kim Jong-il is only head of the party and head of the army. He's not head of the government of the state. That office belongs to his deceased father, Kim Il-sung. It's a necrocracy. A thanatocracy. It's one short of a trinity, I might add. The Son is the reincarnation of the Father. It is the most revolting and utter and absolute and heartless tyranny the human species has ever evolved. But at least you can die and leave North Korea. Does the Quran or the Bible offer you that liberty? No. No. The tyranny, the misery, the utter ownership of your entire personality, the smashing of your individuality only begins at the point of death. This is evil. This is a wicked preachment.
I don't want anyone to despair. We have a number of consolations. We have our own solidarity, we have love, we have literature, we have our duties to each other. What leads to despair is to live the only life one has, being told what to do by despots and crackpots and pseudoscientists who claim the right to order us around in the name of God. Humanity has to outgrow and transcend that oldest of all the tyrannies. Atheists do not say, we know there is no God. We say, to the contrary, no argument and no evidence has ever been adduced that we consider to be persuasive. There's no reason to believe in evidence or argument, ontology or science.
Fair enough. I have no problem with that statement right there. That if you're not satisfied, we all have our own thresholds of proof. Even like, what is it? 1 Thessalonians 5:21 says, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. And I get, fundamentalists would say, well, that means holding fast to the word of God, the Bible. That's what that means. But I mean, that is presumptuous to say that that is the extent of what was meant by that text. I think in the scientific realm, it's based on observation. We can deify science, many have, as though what we observe and what we adduce, to use his word from it, is dispositive, but we find errors and mistakes in science. The James Webb Space Telescope has discovered certain problems with galaxies moving away faster than the speed of light, the cosmic background microwave radiation that they were hoping to find, and seeing through the B-mode polarities, and all this stuff, that they're discovering things that were wrong. And science, so to speak, I mean, humans, via observation and logic or argumentation or reason, say, well, this is what the evidence means. This is what these observations mean. We see something in a petri dish, or we see something in nature, whether biology or anywhere, and this is our best understanding of it. It's put forth as a law or a postulate, and more science is built on top of that, otherwise known as a theory. But those theories are proven sometimes to be wrong. Then you wind up with a crisis in mathematics, whether it's in probability theory or whatever you've got, that you wind up with problems based on what you formerly believed. And so, when you put all your eggs in the science basket, it can be problematic. But I do like what he said, that no argument has been produced that satisfies an atheist that there is a God or some deity. Fair enough. I mean, I have no problem if somebody says, look, you haven't met my threshold of proof on a given idea, whether there is or isn't a deity.
The same with the afterlife. Of course we don't say that we know there isn't one. We say that we don't know anyone who can bring any reason to think that there is. This is a very important distinction, and it's very regrettable that you miss it. And I'm sorry to say, Dinesh, that the immediate loser in an argument about things of which we can and can't be certain, where the only thing that is certain in these laws is the principle of uncertainty, the immediate loser, the man who has to leave the island, sorry Dinesh again, right away almost, is the one who says, I already know all I need to know. I already have all the information I need. Indeed, I've been given it by a supernatural body. I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but when I hear people on the bus saying that they're talking to God, Well, what do you do? You move closer to that person, or am I right in thinking you edge slightly away? I think that's a very good thing.
There's an excellent reason why the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment was first proposed. It wasn't proposed just by people like myself who wouldn't go any further than deism in their attitude to religion. It was proposed by many people who were quite devout and who thought not just that the government must not be corrupted by religion, but that the churches mustn't be corrupted by the association with the state either. And I think that's an equally morally valid point. James Madison,
I like it.
The co-author of the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom and of the First Amendment and the other things that bodyguard our wonderful Republican secular constitution, didn't think there should be chaplains to open Congress, didn't even think there should be chaplains in the armed forces. If people want to pray in the army, they can. No one can stop them, but we're not going to pay for someone to pray over them. These are very tough questions, but it must be understood that these were part of the very urgent views of the framers and the founding fathers, and it's our responsibility to be discussing this very seriously now at a time when Hillary Clinton's joined some reactionary evangelical organization to try and bolster her faith-based connections. John McCain, a lifelong Episcopalian, has this year, I wonder why, said he's a Baptist.
That holds no sway. That's just a political argument. John McCain, Hillary Clinton, they're just pandering for votes. That's all that ever is. Hillary Clinton said she's been a lifelong Yankee fan. She never followed baseball a day in her life. She's from Arkansas. She's not a Yankee fan, but she became a senator of New York. What the politicians do has no bearing on a legitimate argument about whether there's God or whether science or whether there's not a God, put it that way. But at least he went so far as to say he brought in deism, just a belief that there's a creator somewhere possibly. Not that he believes it. He's actually saying you can't disprove it. His whole point is, and it's consistent or consonant with this channel, Thinking Theology. He said no argument has been brought in about an afterlife or about a deity that persuades the atheist to the other side. But what politicians do, please.
And Barack Obama, Senator Obama, has been caught in some big-mouthed, sinister, windbag, rock and roll horror show church on the South Side. Religion is poisoning our election and our democratic republic, and it's time.
I think the notion of religion poisoning, I mean, I've heard this before, where you point out the bad things. There's pedophilia. There are these things that happen, within the church. But rarely do I hear the good things that are happening there to sort of counterbalance what might be happening there. And this isn't a defense of the church or of religion. I'm saying if we're going to be fair-minded about things, if you're going to point out the negative things that take place, you got to point out the positive things too, and then see, like, is there a net benefit? Is it a wash? Because if you're going to using human behavior of people who believe as your guidepost is saying, look at these bad things, this is part of my argument against religion, it really does need to have a totality, as much as you can get one, more information about the charities that feed people or house people or however you want to depict the charities, clothe people and all that. You may disagree with proselytizing and going to different places and converting Islamic nations or whatever to Christianity, otherwise you don't feed them, whatever. There are despicable things that happen that all human beings do, whether they're atheists or religionists or fundamentalists. So it just kind of complicates things a little bit, and that's what thinking does. It tends to complicate things until you get a fuller picture.
That we've said enough. If you want to be a fraud and a fundraiser and a shakedown artist and a big mouth and an ethno-racist in this country, try your best. But it's long past time that we said putting reverend in front of your name is not enough of an achievement.
They're making supernatural and superhuman and divine claims. They're claiming to know God, what God wants of you.
Yeah.
What he wants you to eat, who he wants you to sleep with, in what position. On what days of the week you should eat this or that, what animals you should avoid devouring. They claim to know something that we claim is not knowable. Now, which of those claims is the more plausible? And they don't concede that extraordinary claims involve extraordinary evidence, which is why evidence is such a casual thing with them.
That I wholeheartedly agree with. Absolutely agree with that. Like when people rely strictly on texts to establish so-called truth, there are a lot of problems with that. It should extend beyond that. So I agree with that last part wholeheartedly.
However, we do have extraordinary evidence that I laid out earlier of how our cosmos originated and how our DNA has been found to be sequenced. And some of these things are lovely to contemplate, and some of them are rather sobering. But none of them require a God. Now you reflect again on what I said about the death of a son.
Why is he standing behind ropes? I don't get that. Is that standard in whatever country he's presenting in? That's kind of weird. Or church?
Every second, about the impending collision of the galaxies, about the rapid expansion rate of the Big Bang. And you ask yourself, I can't tell you this isn't happening without a purpose. I certainly don't have enough knowledge to say that. But I can say with reasonable certainty, I don't think all this was undertaken, this vast creative destruction, so that one primate species on one small planet could hear the Pope telling them that AIDS may be bad, but that condoms are worse. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, what could be more self-flattering, pathetic, and yes, superstitious than that?
And that's also, that too. It's why is the universe so big? How is it so big? What's on the other side of are there multiverses? All these sort of things that we have thought experiments about and we sort of analyze. And I don't disagree at all with that it is problematic that, he simplified it down so that a Pope could tell you these two things. So that's why the universe exists. So the Pope could say HIV, this, and, but condoms are worse. It's an oversimplification. But to state it in the more common terms, that all this universe was created so that God could have a family here on earth, and that's mankind. And people who have a problem with that, I don't have a problem with people who have a problem with that argument. I get it. I completely get it. And I agree with a lot of that. I'm like, it does seem a bit odd that all of this will be happening. When you see the misery in the world, certain church doctrines, theological doctrines, that God is in control and God is love, yet horrible things happen on planet Earth. And I think it's more directed at those arguments, but that's how he started. And he's consistent with saying that no argument is convincing that this is true. When you look at the DNA and double helix and chromosomes and all that stuff and the size of the universe, that's not dispositive for me either. That there isn't a God. It actually could become dispositive that there is. It's neither for me. I'm sort of a fence rider on these sorts of things because I see the pros and cons to both sides of the arguments and nuances in between. But people who just take a hardcore position that the Bible is true, this is it, there's God, you're evil if you don't agree with it. And then the other people, the hardcore atheists who say religion is just stupid, I don't have much in common with either of them. I don't know, maybe Hitchens was obviously frustrated with the religionists, the blending of, say, church and state. There's not supposed to be a chaplain praying in all this kind of thing in the U.S. I don't know if he was a U.S. citizen at any point, but in any case, I'm going to leave it at that, guys. You can leave your comments. There were some good things in there. There were some things that he would need to work on a bit. And I'm sure he would have worked on it. But I admire the churches who invited him to speak, assuming that some of these places were church. I wasn't looking at the background to see whether it was a church or just a regular large hall that he was speaking in. But if some church organization invited him to speak, I admire them for opening the door to more thought. Atheist organizations, when they have a Christian or Jewish apologist come in and give their presentation and a debate, I admire that too, because hear all sides of the issue. So there you go, folks. Leave your comments. If you have a suggestion for a video, let me know that as well, and maybe I'll get to that one if it's compelling enough. Have a great day. I'll see you on another video, and keep thinking theology.